My name is Bayeté Ross Smith. I am a photographer. A visual artist, multimedia artist.
Where are you from? Where are you now? And where are you going?
I'm originally from the Upper West Side. I grew up on 90th Street and Columbus Avenue. I went to high school in Western Massachusetts, college at Florida A&M, FAMU. I've also lived in Philadelphia, North Carolina, and I went to graduate school and lived in the San Francisco Bay Area for 8 years in both Oakland and San Francisco. I came back to the city about 7 years ago. In terms of where I'm from and how I got to this point, I began my career as a photojournalist. I worked with the Knight Ridder Newspaper Corporation back in the 90s. So I worked at the Philadelphia Inquirer, the Charlotte Observer, Tallahassee Democrat, and I did some freelance work for Newsday. The first time I came back to New York when I was in my early 20s. So that photojournalistic foundation has always been an important part of how I work and how I create. So I currently work as a visual artist and multimedia artist, as well as an educator. So I teach at NYU's Tisch School of the Arts in the photo department. I also work with the International Center of Photography in their visual journalism program and in their community programs. I'm also the associate program director of the Kings Against Violence Initiative, which is a hospital and school-based nonprofit organization based out of Brooklyn, New York, which addresses violence in our communities as a chronic ailment and public health issue. Similar to the model that's most famously associated with Chicago, with some of the Chicago activists. So CAVI was started by myself and my good friend and colleague, Dr. Rob Gore, who's our executive director. And Rob wanted to create a program that looked at violence as a public health issue that required ongoing treatment. So I'm instrumental in the school-based program, as is Rob, and then we also have hospital responders who counsel people after they've been victims of violence to kind of make them aware of the different options they have at their disposal so they don't leave the hospital and go back into the same patterns of behavior that got them in the hospital in the first place. As a visual artist, I exhibit my work internationally. I also do commissions, and I work on projects based on grants that I receive. I've had a couple of projects be official selections to the Sundance Film Festival, LA Film Festival, Sheffield Doc Fest in Sheffield, England. Got different awards and fellowships, like many different artists. I do some public artwork as well. I exhibit with a gallerist, with an art dealer named Guido Maus, who runs a gallery called Beta Pictoris Gallery and Mouse Contemporary Art. So Guido will take my work to different art fairs and different exhibitions around the world, and also in his own gallery, and sells my work. In addition to me also working in an academic sphere and receiving grants and different awards for artists that sustain my career. So I would say now I do a lot of multimedia and mixed media work in addition to photography. So still photographs, film, video, sculpture, and then incorporating various elements into one another. So I've done a series of sculptures made out of boomboxes that play a soundtrack based on the local community's favorite songs and their oral histories. I've done things that are more traditional photo essay type of work. I've done fine art, conceptual photography, as well as film and video work.
Where are you going?
Unfortunately for me, I'm at a stage in my life where I have a pretty clear picture of my sense of purpose, which is to create media that to create art and media that challenges us to reflect on human interactions, our perceptions of identity and beauty, and how those impact daily human interactions. And a lot of that emphasizes how identity impacts social justice and various anthropological aspects of humanity. So my work examines a variety of different cultural and social factors, and it's designed to raise questions about our common notions about one another, and to question those notions so that we can be introspective and essentially evolve the way our society functions. That can seem kind of grandiose, but it's really the type of thing that that can function in small steps as well as larger steps. There's a series of small steps that lead to a tipping point in terms of social consciousness. So, I work in a variety of mediums. I also like to do a lot of work that's directly engages community, particularly low-income communities of color, but I'm not necessarily restricted to those types of communities when I deal with community engagement. So in terms of where I'm going to be continuing to be the artist and educator that I am, and continue to evolve on the projects that I've worked on and come up with new project ideas that will engage with the world through the fine art sphere, through the public art sphere, through the internet as an interactive art making tool, historically through the archives of work I create, as well as directly through academia and social activism.
Can we hear more about like the mental progression of that? So the development of how you became a photojournalist in the beginning and how that progressed in your career, and mentally, how were you feeling at that time, and how are you feeling now? What inspires you further and further as you go along?
I was born in the mid-'70s and I grew up in New York, but I guess New York isn't as critical a part of this next thing that I'm going to say. But essentially, I grew up in hip-hop, so I come from hip-hop culture. And when I say hip-hop, I'm not talking about like rap music. I'm talking about the culture of hip-hop and all the fundamental principles that accompany that. And so I've gone through life as an adult, as a young adult, and as an adult with a hip-hop mentality, which is essentially about creative problem solving and evolving on style and storytelling in unconventional ways, but in ways that directly relate to an everyday accessible spirit. So what was brilliant about the concept of a breakbeat was we were taking two records and using that to create a whole other genre of music because we didn't have access to anything else, right? Mm-hmm. But at the same time, we're taking the part of that record that's everyone's favorite part of that record, or a lot of people's favorite part of that record, and creating a new sound and new music based on that one part. So it's a culture of reinvention and evolution and expansion at its core, which requires a lot of intellect. I personally believe, this is kind of like a side note, from a written and poetic standpoint, I think if hip-hop wasn't associated with black people and Puerto Ricans and Latinos and ghettos, then it would be considered high poetry. You'd have white kids studying that the way they study any famous European poet, White boys would be talking about. I'm more of a rockimist, but my friend here is more of a Nasist, or however you would say it. That's all another thing for another time. Anyway, coming from hip-hop, it was really important for me to utilize my creativity and my imagination to reinvent and retell common stories and figure out how I could advance and evolve the dialogue about daily life and daily experiences in our society and around the world. So one of the things I learned early on is that the arts, through my involvement in hip-hop, that the arts are an incredible tool for developing mutual understanding as well as a tool for activism. So with that mentality, when I went into college, I was originally studying business administration simply because it seemed like a practical thing to study.
Mm-hmm.
But then I realized that telling stories and telling important stories that at that time, or even in general, don't often get to be told through some of our primary media outlets was more of a passion of mine than just being a corporate administrator. So I had done photography as a hobby since I was in middle school, and that was just a natural transition to be able to tell the stories that I wanted to tell. And at FAMU, the photography department is through the School of Journalism, so I naturally was then placed on a journalistic track. And then my career just evolved from there to going to art school for my master's and then being able to incorporate other methods of storytelling into my journalistic foundation.
Is there any one specific project or work that you would like to talk about right now a little further? Perhaps a question bridge or whatever you're really proud of?
You know, interestingly enough, I've done quite a few things at this stage that I'm proud of, which is nice.
Yeah, I assume so.
Question Bridge is a project that I'm very proud of because...
What is it? I'm sorry, what is the Question Bridge?
So, Question Bridge is a new media, transmedia project that creates a conversation between a diverse group of black men from all across the United States. And it basically provides a window into black male consciousness by allowing viewers to be the proverbial fly on the wall and witness a conversation between black men that they normally wouldn't be able to hear and experience without the use of technology. And the reason why Question Bridge is a transmedia project is because it utilizes multiple platforms to deliver its content to the viewer. So within that, Question Bridge is an art installation. It's a film that can be viewed and screened in movie theaters. We have an interactive website that shows some of the content that we've curated from the film and installation version, but you can also look through all of the content, kind of a la carte, and by question and by answer if you'd like. We also have a mobile app that allows you to look through our archive of content. We've created a book. We have a series of community engagement events we do. We have a curriculum for high school students, and I think that's it. So the idea is with transmedia, each platform allows you to engage in a different audience. So different people will read the book, then will interact with the website. Different people will go to an art installation, then will experience it through education or through the mobile app. And so each one of those platforms engages a different audience, essentially.
And why do you think it's important that different audiences are able to hear this dialogue?
Well, I think in general, as artists and as creative people, it's important that we make our work accessible to the general public within the course of their daily lives. So, you know, we can't think that our work is so special that people go out of their way to seek it out. Again, there's so many different things people can be doing with their time that are very valid, productive uses of their time, particularly when it comes to the art and media that they consume. So for me, it's always been important to make my art, my creativity, relevant to daily life within the course of daily life. And in terms of the content of Question Bridge, essentially what we hope to do was represent and redefine black male identity in the United States of America as a means of kind of exploding the myth that demographic checkboxes actually tell you something about a person or a group of people. So essentially, a lot of those demographic checkboxes primarily relate to appearance, and even then it's somewhat arbitrary. So what we wanted to do was use black males as a case study. And black males